Before we ever talk about the patterns inside of us, we have to acknowledge the ones around us. Patterns are everywhere. Patterns are woven into our clothes, into the way leaves unfurl, in the repetition of waves, in the bark and butterfly wings, the way light dances across a wall. They're in shadows, in sound, in the rhythm of someone's footsteps. It's the way the seasons know exactly when to change. Life is a series of repeating forms, a choreography of echoes, a blueprint of movement that loops and loops again. And just like nature, we have our own patterns, ways of loving, ways of leaving, ways of hiding, ways of reaching, ways of protecting ourselves that we don't question because it feels as natural as the tides. When you start noticing the patterns outside of you, it becomes easier to notice the patterns inside of you. You begin to understand that patterns are universal. They're just the language of how life organizes itself. The invitation is to learn to stop judging the patterns, to witness the patterns, to be curious, to understand the story it's telling. And this is why, in order to change patterns, awareness is the first doorway. Awareness is that quiet moment where you finally see what you've been doing. Not with shame, not with panic. You're just seeing, just witnessing. Patterns thrive in the dark. The moment you turn the light on, something shifts. And the awareness doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just like, oh, there it is again. You name it, you breathe, and you stay with it. You don't run from it. You sit with it to see what it is here to show you. And that is the beginning of change. Most importantly, though, awareness must be paired with grace, not judgment. Judgment tightens your system. It contracts you. It puts this pressure on you to feel like you need to change the pattern right away. Grace creates space. Grace creates possibility. Grace softens you to seeing that you can change the pattern. When you witness your patterns with grace and compassion, you're able to understand, I so understand how I got here. I see how this happened. Patterns aren't failures, they're adaptations. When you honor the adaptation, you create room for transformation. See how that works? Understanding your why gives you momentum. A pattern becomes less powerful when you understand the function it came into your life to serve. Maybe that pattern protected you. Maybe it gave you a sense of control when it felt like nothing else was in your control. Maybe it kept you from feeling alone. Maybe it helped you survive. Maybe it simply was just what you are familiar with. When you can say, I see why I did that, you stop fighting with yourself and you start partnering with yourself. Let's not waste our energy on shaming our patterns, okay? Because we need all that energy in order to change our patterns. So after awareness comes decision. Patterns don't break because we want them to. They break the moment we choose something different. Choose something different. Sometimes that choice is tiny. A pause before reacting, a breath before reaching out, a moment of learning to sit in discomfort, even just 30 seconds longer than you're used to. Awareness opens the door. Choice walks you through the door. The thing about patterns is they are muscle memory, and so they're going to try to pull you back. Often, in fact. Just like your body can repeat familiar movements, your mind repeats familiar stories. The goal is to catch yourself if you're going to fall back. Again, not with judgment, but with awareness. And then, what choice can I make next time this happens? Every time you slide back, I want you to not look at it as a failure, but as an opportunity to learn and practice. Practice what you want to do differently. Oftentimes, I like to say out loud, oh, that was an old pattern that I used to behave in. Current hope makes different decisions. But just remember that progress is a spiral. So every single time you make a different choice, every time you recognize a pattern and you do something different, you're creating a different pattern. Reflection rewires your brain. So remember that visualization can all use the same neural pathways as actually doing something. Every time you notice, you are giving your brain a chance to create a new neural pathway. It's a win. It's not a loss if you forgot to make a different decision in that moment. It's a win every time you notice. You get to ask yourself, what do you wish you would have done instead? In what moment did you abandon yourself and return to the old pattern? What did you need from yourself to make a different decision? What version of you wants to come through in this moment? That's a big one to ask yourself. Every time you reflect, you're giving your brain a rehearsal, and it is powerful. Repetition rewires you, reflection reshapes you. See the pattern? The thing about patterns is oftentimes they come with an emotion, and emotions must be felt, they can't be bypassed. A lot of times patterns are built on unprocessed emotions. So there's a feeling underneath this pattern that is asking you, please sit with me. A lot of times underneath the patterns for me personally is fear or grief. Grief because I'm realizing I need to finally let something go that I have been holding on to, and fear because I don't know what's coming next. And do I have the capacity to go towards what's coming next? As I've spoken about a million times, and I will speak about a million more times, sitting in your emotions is how you build capacity. And capacity is what helps you choose differently next time. It's all worth it. This is where I will remind you that your nervous system matters more than your willpower. If your nervous system is overwhelmed, it is so much easier to choose what feels familiar instead of choosing something different. So this is the other reason in regulating your nervous system is so important. Ground, breathe, move, journal, shake, anything that is a warm, soft hug for your nervous system. Also remember, patterns often were created to try to protect you. So you're not weak when you find yourself falling back into patterns. It's just that you now need to remind your body you're safe to do something different. When you create safety, you create choice. Remember that, write that down. Then the next step is identity shift. Identity shifts break patterns. They break when you stop relating to the person who keeps choosing the old pattern. When you say, I am becoming someone who chooses differently. I am someone who listens to my body. I am someone who honors my needs. The pattern will no longer fit the more you carry that story. It becomes way too small for who you are becoming. Then, really important, one of the things that I have to talk to my clients about the most, celebrate every single tiny win. I do not care how little it seems, celebrate it. Notice the second you pause. Notice the moment you took a breath instead of spiraling. Notice the time you didn't send that text to that old familiar person that you're trying to break yourself from. Notice the shift in your energy that follows. Any small deviation from the old path deserves celebration. This is how you continue the momentum. I've said this also before. Momentum is medicine. Momentum becomes identity. Identity becomes freedom. The thing about breaking patterns is it's not about perfection, it's about devotion, and devotion to your process. There's no flawless way to do this. You just need to be committed to keep trying again and again and again and again. Think about how long it took for that pattern to be created in your mind, and give yourself the space and grace and time and love to create a different one. Recently, I personally said out loud a pattern that I have been avoiding recognizing. And because it was something that was so familiar, and if I said the pattern out loud, it meant I had to let go of some of my favorite people. It also meant that I had to accept that I was also choosing to be partly loved because I was afraid to open my heart back up to be fully loved again. Because what happened the last time I opened my heart up to be fully loved? My husband got ALS and died. And so I got scared to allow somebody to fully love me and for me to allow myself to fully love someone. And so I fell into an old pattern that was created at my childhood. My dad was not in my life very often. And when he was, it was so much love and goodness and gifts and attention. And then I wouldn't see him. And I do not actually as a child remember caring about that. I must have some point allowed that pattern to be imprinted upon me because that is the love since Steve has passed that I have been very okay with accepting. They are there when they are there and it's great. And then they disappear and then they come back and they disappear and it's a pattern. And I was so okay with it until I wasn't. There comes a point when we have to recognize when the patterns of our past are no longer working for what we want in our future. And that's hard and it's scary. And it is so much easier to continue to choose the pattern instead of breaking it. So the first thing I had to do was say out loud, I'm in a pattern right now, and be gracious with myself and the other people that were a part of this pattern because they also were in patterns. Isn't that funny how it works? We all play out our patterns with each other. Awareness is key in order to not be hurting our feelings or everyone else's feelings, right? I had to say, oh, I am accepting half love. What would it look like if I were to actually allow myself to accept full love? Somebody who actually fully committed to me and didn't come in and out of my life. I couldn't tell you. And that's what was scary. And that's when I had to do the work and visualize myself choosing something different. And that's when I had to actually do the inner work of healing inner Hope. Little girl Hope, who I didn't even realize was still carrying this pattern, needed my love. And so I had to start practicing visualizing a girl who is capable of being loved so fully and loving so fully. And the thing about love is there is this willingness and openness to the possibility that we could be hurt. And then there is this complete faith in ourselves that we will be okay. That's the part that's really important, is that I had to get back to having confidence in myself that even if something were to happen in one of these relationships, I would be okay. And you know how I know that? Is even ending this situationship that was giving me the half-love pattern hurt so much. I was so attached to him. Yet, I'm okay. I was able to sit in that pain. I was able to cry. I was able to spiral. I was able to get angry. I had all the feelings. And then I got to the point where we've been able to build a friendship with strong boundaries. Slowly but surely, we will both be able to move on and find the things we know we want and that we are ready for. And that's a blessing. So trust yourself. Give yourself the support and love you need to break the pattern. Allow yourself to see it. The truth lies within, and sometimes it is really, really hard to see it. Really, truly, give yourself grace. The interesting part about me breaking patterns is that this isn't new work for me. I've been breaking patterns most of my life because there was a lot of things that I adopted from family or society that I just realized didn't work for my current reality. Now, with my clients, what has been really cool to witness is the way in which the minute I can bring their awareness to the fact that they might be playing out a pattern in whatever situation they're talking about, and they are open to receiving that information and seeing it for themselves, you can literally watch them little by little by little make different choices and break the pattern. And that is such a blessing to witness because it reminds us that the human spirit is so resilient and so capable if you just consistently show up making different choices. And yeah, there's plenty of times where I've had to have the conversation with my clients where they say, I backslid into an old pattern, and they're coming with shame. And we work through the shame because the shame is where you can get stuck. The shame can sometimes make you feel that there is no purpose of continuing to try because you already messed up, so we might as well just give the whole thing up. That's a lie. That's what shame is really good at. What really needs to happen when we slide back into old patterns is we understand that that's part of the process. It is so easy to go back to what is familiar. That is why humans are made to love a comfort zone. But everything beautiful happens outside of that. Everything beautiful happens outside of just making one small, simple, new decision. So oftentimes when my clients come back and they are very casual about telling me a story of which they made a different decision, I'm usually quick to say, hey, did you by chance celebrate that? And usually their response is, actually, no. And we have a moment of celebration because that's how we keep cementing it and building the momentum. So if you have a pattern you're trying to break and you would like to have a little bit of accountability, leave it in the comments and come check in with us about how you're doing with your pattern breaking. I would love to hear from the community things that they've already worked on. Maybe if there's other tips or tricks you have about breaking patterns, feel free to include it. Here's for pattern recognition, y'all.